So we're here for the second edition of DiBella's Digest, of course. Got a lovely view of your dog there.
Yes, my dog looking out the window.
What's her name?
So, her name is Topolina. It means little mouse in Italian.
Oh, lovely. She's very cute.
Thank you. She thanks you. She's a quarantined baby. This dog. We got her as a puppy right at the beginning of this, so it's helping us get through quarantine.
So first of all, what I wanted to ask you about this week, there's a few things that have broken over the time, but what do you make of Florida designating the WWE as an essential workforce during this period?
Well, you got to consider the fact that the governor of the state of Florida, a guy named DeSantis, is a fucking moron. So when you start with that premise, nothing is surprising. This is also a man. It took him 6 or 7 weeks of nightly newscasts repeating the same information to come to the conclusion that they were silent carriers of COVID-19. So, I mean, the fact that this governor of Florida has called WWE an essential business doesn't surprise me. But I mean, that being said, you and I know boxing's not an essential business, and neither is wrestling. Everybody wants to get back to live sports entertainment because we're all losing our minds. There are industries everywhere dying and suffering because we don't have live sports. But no one's going to get back to it with a crowd until it's safe. It's not going to happen. And particularly in this country where there's state regulation everywhere. Could Aram, if WWE continues in Florida and Aram gets the okay to use the same facility as the WWE, can he start boxing? Yeah, I guess he could. That raises a lot of issues for ESPN, and it also raises issues. What happens I guess we're going to start up again. I said this on the last I said this on the last one of our little video chats. We're going to start up again with no crowds. There's no question that's how boxing's going to come back. Boxing's going to come back. The first events we're going to see are going to be in rooms where there's no audience. There are some states here, and there are some places in the United States here. The state of Minnesota, is one. There are other states that have virtually no cases of COVID-19, but you still have issues of traveling fighters from elsewhere. You're going to travel a fighter from New York. You're going to travel a fighter from Detroit. You got to test everybody. You know, we don't, at this moment in time, they don't even know whether you're still shedding the virus after you've had it. They don't know. We don't have right now an antibody test that's available to people to take a test to see if they have the antibody. So we're a ways away from restarting. Can I see boxing occurring in certain circumstances in front of empty crowds, empty rooms in July or August? Yes. Do I think we're going to have boxing in our usual way where we're elbow to elbow screaming and singing Sweet Caroline in a fucking arena? No, we're not having that for the foreseeable future, and we got to face that reality.
Now, shortly after we spoke last week, we talked last week about Dana White's apparently bloody-minded determination to schedule an event this month. Shortly after we spoke, he finally admitted defeat and faced the reality, it seemed, at least for a short period. But now he seems to be determined to go again in May. So he doesn't seem to have learned his lesson.
He will be the first combat sports. UFC will be the first combat sports entity to return, and I believe they will return in May. We discussed last week the reasons and advantages he has. Self-contained, their own doctors, their own officials. He has his own self-contained sterile arena on his campus in Nevada. Now I imagine he's going to have some issues with the state of Nevada, but UFC is important to Nevada, and Nevada is important to UFC, and they'll probably figure out a way to allow something to happen. So I tend to think that they will be the first entity to do this. But as we talked about last week, boxing has its own set of issues that are different and greater than UFC does. And by the way, when he comes back, he's not going to come back without detractors. And here's the other thing: what happens when the first athlete or the first official or the first person in the room when you're taping, winds up positive? I mean, I don't know.
Another big story from this week is Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s stated desire to become an elite trainer. What did you make of that?
If he wants to be an elite trainer, there's no question in my mind he can be. I mean, Floyd's boxing IQ, whatever you think of Floyd Mayweather, he's a boxing genius. And I could tell you, knowing him for as long as I have, which is since he's a kid, and having spent a lot of time sitting around him at prize fights over the last 20 years plus, or so, I have no doubt that he has what it takes to be a great trainer. It's a matter of whether he wants to do it. Is he going to have that dedication? Is he going to want to be in the gym that often? Is he going to want to be that dedicated to another person's career? If he wants to, I have no doubt that he can.
Something else I wanted to ask you about is something that came up on social media recently, certainly here in the UK, and something I vlogged about earlier this week, is boxers doing good deeds but publicising them on social media, and whether that in any way kind of mitigates the respect they should get for doing the good deed in the first place.
It's not just boxers; it's everybody.
Yeah, celebrities in general. Yeah.
Look, my attitude is this: like, I'd rather see a boxer, a politician, a celebrity, an ordinary person publicize their good deed and do it than do no good deed at all.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to discourage somebody from doing a good deed because they're publicizing it. Not my style, and it's funny because every time I try to use social media to relay some kind of positive message, there's usually some troll writing, "Oh, you're an affluent guy. What the fuck are you doing?" Well, I'm doing a lot of things, but I'm not telling you. But people that know me know I do a lot of things, and people who've known me for the last 30 years since I've been in a position to help people know that I tend to take those opportunities, and it's not my thing to publicize them. I don't think I'm not going to criticize somebody who's doing good for publicizing it, but I also want to go a little bit to the other extreme. If you're sitting there and you're telling everybody that you're a 100 millionaire and you have billions and you're worth more money than God, and you make some little token gesture that my next door neighbor, who's not affluent like you are, would make quietly, then don't expect me to stand and cheer. But, for example, if the Jack from Twitter is going to give $1 billion and 30% of his net worth, to help victims of COVID-19, then I salute that guy because that's a tremendous act of philanthropy. And I hope that a bunch of other billionaires follow suit. I'm not going to be so critical because like I said, I'd rather see people do the good things, even if they're going to take credit for it, than not do them.
Let's talk a little bit about Terence Crawford. Seems to be picking more fights on Twitter.
Bud's a really smart guy. He's a great fucking fighter. I'm always interested to see what. But he should shut his mouth. I'm sensitive when people say to somebody, "Stay in your lane," because we're all entitled to be rounded people and have opinions and have thoughts and express them. It's a free, hopefully this is a free country. Hopefully, I'm starting to question a little bit, but hopefully it's a free country. But when you're sitting there and you're pining in the face of science and data, and you're just ignoring science and data and stream of consciousness, throwing out potentially dangerous and damaging thoughts, it troubles me. And Bud's not Dr. Fauci. So, I mean, it doesn't shock me that on a podcast, he would spew some stuff that I wouldn't agree with and wouldn't want to hear. I would wish that rather than go after clickbait, news entities out there would be careful about what celebrity or celebrity athlete nonsense they're putting out there that might affect impressionable people and create potentially behaviors that could be dangerous. So, for me, like, I'm not like, again, like, Bud's entitled to his opinion. I've always respected the guy, but I didn't like that stream of consciousness. I don't agree with it, and I really didn't like the attention it was getting from boxing press, because particularly the boxing press that weren't going out there with an opinion, that was simply reporting Bud's comments. Because for a young fighter or a young athlete or a young person in Nebraska, where Bud is a superstar completely, in Nebraska he's an influencer. He's an influencer in boxing. I don't want to see people be influenced to stupid fucking behavior, even if it's from a great athlete.
From a boxing perspective, how much is his legacy harmed or going to be harmed by the fact he doesn't seem able to fight any of the fighters from the PBC?
I don't know. I mean, legacy. He's a great. It takes two to go. So it's not just Top Rank and Bud that have to be willing to make a deal. It's PBC and Heyman, and those fighters. I mean, I think if the fighters come back from this pandemic, whenever it ends, and demand matchups, on one hand, I think that will greatly aid the effort to get the biggest fights. On the other hand, I think that all of these PBC, DAZN, ESPN, there's going to be business pressures in all of those areas, and loads of fighters are expecting to get activity. So there's going to be pressure that may cause more PBC versus PBC, DAZN versus DAZN, and ESPN versus ESPN matchups. But time will tell. Yes, it's going to harm him if he never fought the best welterweights of his time. It's going to harm him, but he's not the only one being harmed by that.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about fighting Keith Thurman this week. I know that was something on social media. He's often said that he wants the Spence fight eventually, but we're going to get Kell Brook next, it seems.
Danny, I'm getting a little, I got to be honest, like, I'm getting a little edgy with all this time off. Like, my patience is not what it was. And you know me, I'm a little bit of a wild man in general, but my patience is less now than it may have been a month ago.
That's a scary
Why
thought.
are all fucking fighters calling each other out? Everybody's brave as fuck now. Everybody, I'll get in there for nothing. I'll fight you tomorrow. Let's fight in my mother's backyard. Where were these fucking guys 2 years ago or a year ago? I mean, like, like right now that no one's fighting, everybody's getting brave. Okay, I want to see this attitude continue when we're back in the ring.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, COVID makes heroes of us all, it seems. But
yeah, everybody right now is an armchair warrior, literally. So,
But generally, the kind of split between not just PBC and Top Rank ESPN, but the promotional entities in general, is that bad for the sport? That these big fights?
It's bad for. Let's face realities. COVID is, politicians all over the world have described this as the great equalizer, right? Well, I'll tell you what COVID's done in boxing. Crazy money was being spent on multiple platforms, frankly, without great results. Fucking insane money was being spent, and overall, the quality of programming and fights has not been improving. It's not gotten better because crazy money was spent. What COVID's going to do is, the bubble is now burst. It was going to burst anyway. But now with COVID-19, the bubble is burst. Where do we go from here? We're going to find out. The fans are going to have something to do with finding that out. When we come back into a global recession, when we return to a global recession, are we going to see people willing to pay in the United States $70 and $80 for a pay-per-view? I don't know. I have my doubts. Will DAZN have an easy time, reestablishing a subscriber base, which admittedly they knew they had to grow anyway? I don't know. But I can tell you that there's going to be a big adjustment. Fighters are going to make, particularly the star guys, you're not going to see $3 and $4 million paydays or $2 million paydays for fights that are pedestrian. Danny Garcia, and I don't see when we come back a Bud Crawford or a Danny Garcia making $3 million to fight Bozo the Clown. So I think that we are going to see wholesale changes to our industry. Some of them would have come anyway. But when I look at what went on in the last 5 years, billions of dollars were spent. More money was spent on boxing in the United States that's been spent in my career, in my 30 years in the sport. For what? For product, frankly, that overall was mediocre. For shitloads of money were burnt without really building a fan base. Do I think that the streaming money and the crazy money that we've seen the last 5 years really was a net positive to the sport of boxing? No, I think it was relatively neutral. There are a lot of people that made a lot of money. A lot of promoters Eddie made a lot of money. Golden Boy made a lot of money. Canelo made a lot of money. Arum has a good deal at ESPN. People did very, very well. But as a whole, did boxing rise with it in terms of its popularity? Did its demographics, advertising demographics, get more attractive to advertisers? Not really. I mean, we didn't see wholesale changes for the positive in the sport. We saw a lot of money being spent. Now that's going to adjust, but maybe the adjustment is going to create a necessity to create the best product. But time will tell, because we still, by definition, have different avenues, particularly when you look at boxing in the U.S. You have an ESPN avenue, a PBC avenue, and you still, when DAZN gets back up and running again, a DAZN avenue.
Brilliant. Well, as always, it's been educational. This is probably the only thing that makes me hope the pandemic goes on forever, is that we get DiBella's.
Oh, no. This is not good enough reason, Danny. It's not good enough reason. But to take a little time out of a Wednesday to give to you guys and shoot the shit, I'm happy to do it.
Brilliant. Well, we'll see you back then at the same time next week.
Take care, my friend. Be well.
And
Bye-bye.
you stay safe.